Austria, from Europe. I hope everybody can hear me. If you can hear me, can you please, okay, people can hear me, that's great. It's great to see 23 people online already. Obviously with a Germanic background, we start on time here. If you have any questions or any comments or anything, please put them into the chat box, because I cannot make the participants window. I cannot maximize it, because otherwise you don't see the entire slide. So you will see two gray boxes. On top is, I think, the one covers what you are seeing, and this is the participant box. I will just try and make it, yeah, I cannot even make it much smaller here. Let's go back here. This was not supposed to be like this. Anyway, so you will be, so that you won't be inconvenienced through the boxes. So if you need to tell me anything or if there are any questions, please use the chat function, all right? Gladius, that's very kind. For some reason you thought that I was in Alaska. It's Evelyn Gallert who is in Alaska. I am in Europe. I used to live in Singapore. I was the director of a program on family businesses at the IIM in Bangalore before as well. So I do have some connections to India, and I've always been very interested in India. I would like to start today's webinar with a quote that Shayla put in here. And you will see that throughout the webinar, I will be referring to some of the posts that you made. And I'm trying to do this for the benefit of everybody, because obviously we have here two cohorts. And we just want to make sure that, or at least I want to make sure that you can benefit from some of the discussions in both in both sections here. Yes, Minnie, I've been to India more than once, and lots of Indian friends, and it's just, I don't know, it's always great to have a connection with Indian ladies in particular, I must say. So let's get started. So why do I want to put this quote here? Shayla, are you here? As I don't, I cannot maximize the participants thing here. I don't see whether you are here now, but I wanted to bring this in because it is very good about decisions and the importance of making the right decisions. So what is the secret of success? It's right decisions. How do you make right decisions? Experience. And how do you gain experience? Wrong decisions, which is absolutely true, and which already shows you a lot, excuse me, which shows you a lot about the importance of corporate culture and company culture to decision making and to making mistakes, and also to, in the end, ethical decision making. Because if you're not allowed to make any mistakes, you will not try and will not want to think out of the box. And that's the same then for ethical decision making. All right, so I would like to just quickly go through. Okay, you're in. Okay, perfect. I just try to go back here. The quote that you brought in here, I think it's really very, very apt, and it sums up a lot. Thanks very much for posting this one, and as I said before, maybe not everyone has heard it because some people have now entered the webinar. I'm trying to bring in comments from both sections of participants here so that people can no, Shella, your voice won't be audible because you're auto muted. Okay. Your microphone is automatically muted, otherwise we have 44 people talking at the same time. So the system here does it like that. So this is why I said at the beginning, if you have anything you want to talk about or you want to comment on, just please put it into the chat box. Just makes it easier, because again, if I maximize the participants window to see somebody raising her hand, you won't be seeing the slide, so that's the problem. Okay, so let's go back in here. Now, obviously, we talked about problem-solving, decision-making, and uncertainty and ethics in here. And then we had two discussion boards. We still have two discussion boards whereby the first one has been experiencing a lot of traffic and the second one is sort of gaining traction. I will be talking through the content a little bit and then about the first discussion board here. The reason why I'm talking through the content is because I've realized that not everybody's actually reading the content before making discussion board contributions. So I thought it might be actually not the worst idea to just briefly talk about this. So we have 4 steps in the problem-solving process that we wanted to talk about in the courseware and did talk about in the courseware, and talked about performance problems, opportunity gaps, and we wanted to resolve these gaps. Then make decisions that actually affect organizational effectiveness in a positive manner, and want to use a systematic problem-solving process, talk about uncertainty in decision and decision-making aids for ethics. Now, obviously, if we want to solve a problem, we need to be able, first of all, to identify it. I always say awareness is key. You will hear this very often from me. As soon as you're aware of something, you can do something about it. And very often, things are sort of more or less boiling under the surface, and people don't realize really what's going on. So first of all, logically, we need to identify the problem, and very, very often that's very difficult, and people don't really realize what's going on. So that's the first and most critical step here. We then go on to try and diagnose the cause. Now, what are the root causes for the problem? We use certain techniques, root cause analysis techniques, that use either inductive approaches or deductive approaches. Where an inductive approach, that would be starting by analyzing the gap itself and then figuring out the root cause by looking at the underlying causes. And not only from one angle, but from a number of angles of the problem. And we also can follow the deductive approach, where we start with a set of typical root causes for a gap, and then try to figure out how we can eliminate best those causes that are most probably not really the ones that are causing the gap. Try to name the problem, and we keep on asking why, like little children, until we get to the root cause. Pretty, yeah, very good. The root cause analysis, it sounds so logical, and it is so logical. And you know what? Very often it's just common sense that should be applied, but very often common sense is not applied. It's amazing. Yes, fishbone analysis, fishbone and five wide, for example. So pretty, you say it helps them to come up with, yeah, exactly, with the exact issues. And I really agree with this. It is very simple, but very powerful. And again, I mean, this thing with common sense, I just think it's astonishing that people don't use this, right? Now, finding solutions, we need to generate solutions as the third step. Now, that would be common sense is not very common. Yes, absolutely. This is true. This is unfortunately true. Sometimes it's really good to listen to children, for example, what they tell you as a solution to a problem. Try this. They will not be sort of clouded by expectations of what was written in a management book or whatever. But sometimes children or people who you would least expect it from will give you very, very clear ideas. Yes, Kalbata, it's always good to listen to children, yeah. And they will say it spontaneously, Sanaba, yes. Absolutely. So sometimes, I mean, it helps. I did this with my children a few times, and it's really interesting what they come up with. It's really, thinking out of the box for us in a way. So for generating solutions, that is a creative process. Use your imagination, use your intuition. Again, for kids, intuition comes much more easily. And the older we get, the more we are sort of taught to not listen to our intuition, which I personally think is not good. But we don't. What I don't want to do here is, please do not mix up intuition and being impulsive. This is something completely different, or being emotional. This is a different thing. Yeah, Calvata, I think intuition also improves with experience, or it can improve with experience, as long as it's not getting clouded, you know. So, okay, same person, Bindu, you say, same person thinking on one topic tends to bring a black spot for reviews important by peers. That is exactly why we have the discussion boards, where we have peer learning, a lot of peer learning going on. You learn a lot from each other's comments and get a number of different aspects on the same matter. You will have seen this for those of you who already started posting on the IKEA case, getting different aspects and getting different angles and different insights from people. So as I said before, for generating solutions, use your imagination, intuition, and brainstorm. You might want to do the brainstorming in such a manner that you ask people in your team to brainstorm, if it's a team thing, to brainstorm by themselves, alone, individually first, and then get together, so that people's ideas are not getting clouded through or by contributions that you see written up on a flip chart, for example. Okay, so we hear very good learning you got in this discussion board, Bindu. That's great. I mean, you know, that's the whole point. You are divided into two groups, and you cannot see the comments from the other groups. That's why I'm trying to put them into this webinar. Okay, I'm trying to link stories from both groups in this one webinar. Okay. Okay, from the root cause analysis. Okay, great. So let's go back here. We need to, as a step 4, we need to develop a plan that will allow us to implement solutions, and to implement such solutions that actually close the gaps that were intended to close. That's, again, I mean, that's logical, this is common sense, but how many times have we seen solutions that actually do not close the gaps, but make them maybe even wider? So that's a real disaster. So just to maybe keep this sort of in front of us and make it clear what needs to be done. We need to, for decision making, just like in problem solving, accurately and completely identify the decision problem. We need to define the decision problem. And with this, you will have seen in the courseware, and if you reflect on them in your own life, common heuristics that help you or distort decisions when you make decisions, and these are sort of patterns and guidelines. So they may speed up the decision-making process, but they can also be really problematic. One is perceived loss versus perceived gain. So we have an element of risk in almost all of our decisions. Very few things are sure things. And risk-averse people then would prefer to have a certain payoff and not have a gamble, even if it's a moderate gamble only. And if we are risk-seeking people, or if we have risk-seeking people, these people prefer an uncertain gamble to pay off, whether it's moderate or large. Now, availability bias is another one where people measure the frequency, as we spoke about in the first webinar as well, the probability or likely causes of an event on the basis of which instances or occurrences of that particular event stand out most clearly in the person's memories. So events that are vivid and evoke emotions will be more easily remembered than bland ones, for example. If we look at the representativeness bias, there we have people assessing the frequency and the probability or a likely cause of an event on the basis of a similarity of the similarity of that event to their stereotypes. Here we very often have gender stereotypes or ethnic stereotypes. All women are like this. All Americans are like that. All Germans are like that. Stuff like that, for example. Overconfidence, I think a lot of people have seen this, where people really think they are much better than they actually are and have a much higher level of confidence in their abilities or judgment and knowledge than actually would be warranted. And they also tend to overestimate the probability of positive events and then underestimate, obviously, the probability of negative events. The example here are the arbitration hearings. Amy, I think you don't only see it in the current generation, you can see it a lot. There's also this example of 80% of people, and for men it's even higher, stating that they're better than average drivers. This is the example that I always bring. I mean, how can this be? How can 80% be better drivers than the average driver is? And yeah, exactly. Overconfidence is worse than underconfidence. I would agree with this because people tend to take more risk and can really bring along big problems on an individual level, on a family level, but also on an organizational level. And I think this is really very worthwhile keeping in mind. I'm just trying to go back. Minnie's asking whether it's advisable to be risk averse or low risk taking when making decisions. That really depends on how you approach things. It depends on the situation, whether you are a risk averse or risk seeking person. Sometimes it does pay off to have a gamble, right? It depends on the situation. For some people, it will never pay off. Some people can, you know, lose a lot by being risk averse. Some people can win a lot by being risk averse, etc. So exactly. So Likita, it depends on what is at stake. And Bindu, as you say, an approach should be positive, and then others would also react nicely. Absolutely. I think it's about how you bring it along. But overconfidence can be very dangerous, and you see it a lot. You can see it a lot, for example, when you ask students, like 15-year-old students, 13-year-old students, usually at this age, have you prepared for your exam? And they would say, yeah, no, I'm prepared. I've studied enough, you know. And then, well, we have an issue very often here. Now, Nishi, you say, I need to go back up here. Without taking risks, businesses cannot progress. Yes, that's calculated risk. I would put in here. You have to really think about it and not be completely shy and risk averse, but be very clear about what kind of risks you want to actually take. All right. Yeah, Kalpalata, you can bring this in very clearly to be more rational and make a scientific decision-making process. Absolutely, high risk, high gain, or high risk, you know, high loss, depending. Yeah, calculated risk Gladius brings in here, and absolutely important. Let's go here further. For the consequences, these heuristics are really troublesome if we apply them indiscriminately, when we do not consider whether this actually makes sense, whether the time saved here makes up for the very often lowered quality of the decision. As I mentioned before, the representativeness bias, and we might have ethnic or gender stereotypes, and that is really problematic, and I'm sure some of you or many of you will have been subject to such stereotypes in the past, so that would be an example for such a heuristic. We then went on to talk about uncertainty. Obviously, that is a common issue because we don't live in a certain environment, we don't live in a bubble. So we need to deal with this. We need to assess the probability that certain events might occur, at least try to assess it. And miscalibration occurs when people are overconfident or underconfident. We just talked about overconfidence being very problematic. So we then need to communicate clearly all these things to figure out what's going on and to ensure that we do not have confusion or unrealistic expectations. So I'm trying to go back here what Minnie said. So sales teams take all the risks and the contracts are signed, whereas the delivery teams find it difficult to manage during the actual execution of the contract. That is, yes, something I bet practically all of you will have seen, right? So this, I think sales will tend to be risk takers very often, but the delivery teams do not necessarily need to be risk averse, but I think they're more realistic I would call it like this. Yes, Kalpat, I also agree with you that in an organization, the functions should be, I mean, all areas should be aware of what kinds of risks are actually going on and what is being absorbed where and why. Okay. All righty. Yes, sales have to be more risk takers, you know, because that's their nature and that's the nature of their job. And the delivery people are then the ones who are at the receiving end, really. Decision trees, we talked about this as well in here to help us analyze decisions. Bindu, yes, I want to add something to what you just wrote in here. If you sit at the sales desk, you can come to know the reality. This is very much also a cultural thing in India. I must say, so this is different in India from other cultures when it comes to sales and how to treat customers and how to treat the supplier. And sales are really in a difficult spot here. This is why I say we have here the more risk takers and they're the more maybe realistic ones. What is the difference? The major difference I can tell you is that the respect shown for the vendors when you're in a project in India is completely different from other countries. So I've observed this for a long time, that you can be in really, you know, you experience all kinds of not the highest respectful treatments when you're in a vendor position. Yeah, exactly. They consider the customers move the way they deal with customers, exactly. Customers are treated as a king, but that is that comes at the expense of respect and appropriate and proper behavior towards vendors. And I must say, sometimes when I've been watching this has been really shocking to me, because people behave as if they have no manners whatsoever, and this would be completely impossible in other cultures. The competition makes it even more cutthroat, but in the end, it boils down to a cultural thing. If you think about the cultural background, but we don't have time to go into detail here now. But it is really interesting to watch this. Let's go back to the course. We're here about ethics and ethics systems. We talk about, in the course, we talk about utilitarianism, rights theory, and justice theory, whereby utilitarianism focuses on creating the greatest balance of benefits over harms. And then we have equal weight to everyone who is affected. Now we have the rights theory, focusing on inherent moral characters of certain actions, where it says that people have certain natural rights. So, and you don't lie, you don't steal, and stuff like that. And yes, Kalpata, just going back to what you're writing in here, it does come from your cultural inclination. It has a lot to do with the religious background as well, and where somebody is seen. So it's, and I don't want to go into detail here because we're going to talk for 5 hours non-stop on this. But just to give you an indication that this is certainly different in other cultures. So justice theory, as a third theory here that focus on the definition of what is fair, or fair outcomes, fair procedures. And this is defined in the terms of distributions of outcomes or procedures that are used to reach the decision. Okay. Bindu, I like that. 44 people, 44,000 opinions minimum. I tell you only one thing. I was at a Sikh wedding in the UK, and a Sikh lady showed me how to do the sari properly because, you know, I was shown by a lady from Tamil Nadu before, so obviously that is different. So she showed me how to do it properly. And I come to the wedding, and the family of of the bride, the women there, are like chat, 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 chat. And I tell you, there were 100 opinions about the study, whether this is right or not right, and what needs to be done differently. It was really hilarious. And it just, yeah, my study, this is so funny because I have a number of studies, and when I wear a study, people tend to come over to me, whether it's in Singapore or in Europe, and I don't know. I was told I look similar to some Bollywood actress. I don't know. I don't think I look similar, but it's just very funny because it's hilarious. So anyway, so these people were just having an opinion on everything, and it was just hilarious. So I can see this 44 people, 44,000 opinions. So it's hilarious. Anyway, let's go back to what we were talking about before. Yes, Tapalata, I need to go back to this here because otherwise we're going to talk about cross-cultural differences too much, and we don't have time to finish the webinar here. That's why. It's awesome that I can revise that. That's very kind. Thank you very much. So let's go back here. So we talked about decision-making aids for ethics. We have the problem-solving tools that we talked about. And we also have a Laura Nash 12 questions and also a flow chart that might be able to help us here really. Now for the 12 questions, I think they are really very helpful, because if you are in a situation where you where you're not quite sure what to do, I think it really helps to look at this. Have you defined the problem accurately? Then how would you define the problem if you stood on the other side of the fence? So try to see the problem from various perspectives. Then how did this actually occur in the first place? Then to whom and to what do you give your loyalty as a person and as a member of the organization? Then what is your actual intention in making this decision? Sit down and ask yourself, what is the intention? And we'll be talking about some of the examples that some of you posted later on, and that will come in very, very clearly here. Then how does this intention compare with the probable results, and whom could your decision or action injure? Then can you discuss the problems with the affected parties without any issue before you make your decisions? Are you confident that your position will be as valid over a long period of time as it seems now? These questions, Gita, are called, it's just Laura Nash's 12 questions from by Laura Nash. Could you disclose your decision? Could you disclose your action to your boss or to your family or to board of directors or the society as a whole? Or would you be embarrassed really about it? Or do you not have any issues standing by this decision and explaining why? Then what is the symbolic potential of your action if understood or if misunderstood? Very, very important, communication. And I will be talking about this, some of you posted on communication as well. Not only what you verbally communicate, but also what you non-verbally communicate. If you don't live what you preach, people see it immediately, and this creates a huge drama. So question 9. Sorry, there was a question that asked me, question 9, can you explain more? Are you confident that your position will be as valid over a long period of time as it seems now? Is it a long-term solution really? Or is it a long-term position? Or is it only short-term thinking? So if you just think about this, is it, okay, it's good now, but maybe in 3 months it would not be good, or in 6 years or whatever, all right? So I hope this explains this. Okay, Rashmi? Then under what conditions would you allow exceptions to your stand? It's also important to think about, would you allow any exceptions to your stand? Why, when, why not, etc. Yes, we know it's difficult to disclose the decision many times, but if you I mean, are you, if you think about it, are you able to disclose it or not disclose it? Or would you be really embarrassed about it because it is unethical and you know anyway? So this is, it partly boils down to intuition as well, you know? Or do you not want people to know that this is actually what's going to happen? Stuff like that. We also can have here a flow chart here, where we do the data gathering, then we have an analysis, and then the judgment. And if we look at this for utilitarianism, does it maximize the aggregate well-being? There was a question about this before as well. Now, do we maximize the well-being for the greatest number of people or not? Again, that's a cultural thing as well in here. Then does it respect the rights of the individuals involved, and is it consistent with distributive and procedural justice? If we have no on all criteria, it's not ethical. If we have yes on all criteria, it is ethical. And if we have no on one or two criteria, we need to figure out is one thing more important than another thing, or is there any overriding factor? We then also looked at social responsibility. Now you look at the graph here on the right-hand side, with the socially responsible circle being the biggest one, right? So the legal one is the smallest one, because that is pretty clear what's going on with the legal part, but ethical is more than legal, and socially responsible is again more than ethical. Now, generally, ethics is concerned with negative rights. So there's a right of privacy, do no harm, right of property, do not steal, human dignity, etc., etc. But we do live in a complex and civilized, hopefully civilized society, and we have not only non-interference duties, but also positive duties that we need to perform. Gita, I'm going to talk about the difference in a second, okay? It has something to do, obviously, with it, but I'm going to tell you. Can you hear me now? I hope you can hear me, because my connection quality is 100%. Okay, I hope it's back now. All right, so now there are 3 levels of corporate actions that are broader than the previous one. They are, as you see from the graph here, legal, ethical, and socially responsible. And I'm going to put this chat box to the side. Oops, to the side now, because no, it doesn't let me do it. Okay, well, anyway, you've seen the graph before. First of all, you need to see that if a person doesn't breach any law, but they can still act in an unethical manner. You know, it's okay to fire somebody within the law, if it's within the law, but if you know that the person has got, I don't know how many children, etc., 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 and you know, in a downsizing effort, you have to let go of people and it might be ethical, it might not be ethical. So if, as an example would be, or an example would be for treating somebody unfairly, that would be an unethical act, even though it might still be within the law. Okay. Now, ethics, that goes beyond legal duties. So if you are a manager who acts or wants to act ethically, you have to do more than just focusing on the legal aspects. It's just wider. If you think about it as an onion or something like this, the core is the legal stuff. Then further out, you have the ethical stuff. And then even further out, you have social responsibility that do go beyond ethical duties. And again, you have to do more than acting legally and ethically to be socially responsible. And that could be on a number of levels. It could be foundations, it could be courses. I know that a number of organizations in India also do CSR projects for underprivileged women, children, whatever, a number of projects coming around. Bindu, what do you mean with mixing is important but difficult? while you're writing this up, I'm just going to the next slide here. I did share some articles with you. I hope you all found them inspiring, interesting. Since a lot of people posted replies on these, I hope you found it worthwhile your time looking at them. Okay. Okay, Bindu. About the legal and ethical way. Yes, of course. You need to look beyond the mere legal part. And from what I've seen on the discussion boards, most of you do anyway. Because, I don't know, it's very often there was a term that we're all humans. It's about the human side as well. So that goes into this direction already. So going back to the articles, there was just another article in the Wall Street Journal a few days ago, and I'm going to post this today for you. It is about the latest studies on women in leadership positions. Okay. All right, so let's go to the discussion board about decision-making processes, where you ask what are some of the decision challenges you've come across in your career and how you overcame them, etc. Gladius, I want to start with something that you posted, where you talked about after graduation from college that you had a choice of getting into a company through influence, so a relationship-based entry into a company versus through merit. And I think it's great that your father showed you the way and what to really do. So I think this is really great. When you then said you came across a situation where your husband was being transferred to another place, you had 2 reporting managers there, and you had to turn in your resignation as you would need to relocate. I think this is an amazing story that this backfired on you because you were honest and you told them upfront what will be happening, and to sort of give you the treatment that you received, that within a week you were asked to go to a factory in the interior of India where no female had been earlier, or to, if you don't do that, quit the job. I mean, that was amazing. So this decision-making process is very clear and makes it very clear, and not only clear, how should I put it, shows the difficulties that people can be faced, and especially women can be faced a number of times. Again, I'm putting this in here because you are 2 sections and not everyone has seen everything, all right? Let's see what the speaker said. Okay, this is about the articles to detail. Okay, great. You see here, we were not penalized for that, and it also set a precedent for many others, so it did help in the end. Then you also mentioned that there was another situation when you got promoted to take up a role when your peers were asked to report to you, and that this was a very difficult situation, and how to handle this. And I can tell you, I've been in the same situation, and in fact, I've been in a situation that was even more difficult, because when I was the deputy head at the Institute of International Management in Graz in Austria at this university, I was only 27 years old. And all of a sudden I had more than 20 people reporting to me who were up to 60 years old. And some of them, believe it or not, were my university teachers before. So that became an issue. It is not easy to handle this, but I made it very clear to them. And they were males, not to forget, okay? So the males who were 30 years older and had been teachers to me before. So yes, Sujata, it's a very difficult scenario. And it was a cross-cultural environment as well, because there were Americans and French and Austrians and Germans and all involved. And I just made it very clear. I said, you know, nothing changes really. I need to be the one, for example, to sign your leave, your annual leave form. So if you want to take leave, if they wanted to take leave, they had to come to me and ask me to get the leave form signed. It's just, I don't know, in a way embarrassing for everyone involved. So I told him nothing changes, and I still get the same respect from me as before, and you show me respect, and that's it. And it worked. And that was a tough time, I must say, but it helps you grow. You don't have really time to think about how you're going to handle this. Of course, it would be best if you have the time to, but many times you don't have time to think about how to handle this, and you need to be, I don't know, grounded and maybe go through such a leadership program to know what to do when it happens. Yeah, I'm glad you say, especially when you're so young, they're related. Yes, exactly. It's experience related then. And okay. Any tips on how to handle such a scenario? As I said, always still showing respect, making it very clear that you respect them. Be friendly. Do not reverse the roles, but be very firm, be very strict in the sense of not letting not letting them feel that you're now in a higher position of power, but just being friendly. And we have another story that comes up later in this webinar by, I forgot who posted it. We will see it in a few minutes anyway, where it was done very nicely, and it was done in a similar way to when I reflect on it, how I did it. I did not do it on purpose. I'm sort of going with the flow in a way. All right. Make a line, but with respect. Yes. Okay, assertive, being diplomatic at the same time. That is a very good point, actually. Yes, assertive, but being diplomatic at the same time, and being friendly. I wouldn't say I'm very assertive, and especially not with males 30 years older than me who had been, my university teacher before. It is really difficult, but to maybe be a bit, charming and not seen in the wrong way, charming, but just friendly. And not turning the tables and say, but you did this, but maybe also showing them that you stand above certain things. All right. Yes, Mohini, sometimes we don't have time to really think about it. That's why such a program, such a leadership program, might be very good, because it can alert you to what might happen. It raises awareness. It makes you aware of what things might show up, and be better prepared for them. All right. Let's go back here to the. Sometimes somebody say your strength is that you leverage on. Yes, and you have to be aware of your strengths. You also have to be aware of your weaknesses, and then you can do something about them. On both sides, strengths as well as weaknesses. Nagaratna. Nagaratna, your example I found very good as well, because what you talked about here was that once the implementation was over, one support resource was assigned to a project, and you had to go to visit a client for resolving a problem they were facing, and you found out that all the source codes had disappeared. And when you asked about this, they did not want to speak about this. You reported this to the manager, because obviously, I mean, this is you cannot just decide on everything there. Not much importance was given to this, and strangely enough, after a few days, the support guy resigned and joined the client side, which already gives us a glimpse of what actually is going to happen in this story. So this was obviously planned between the customer's manager and the support guy, and that they pursued their own career, and then leaving no one there to support anything, and which is a really ridiculous thing to do. And the customer's company obviously lost practically all the investment done for this. I mean, it's just how can people ever act like this? We have some other stories that come up here as well, that if you haven't read them yet, you will think to yourself, how can this ever happen? And it's always great to read and hear about these stories because there's so many things that happen that one would never think that can happen. All right, so let's go to this story here. That there was a 6 month time in advance that if you want to recruit, you should go ahead because you need to get tech resources. And so you added a few newcomers to the team so that they could assist. And 3 months training was organized for them. However, after a week, one of them went on leave without informing anyone. She resumed after a week. She was suffering from malaria, cannot talk to anyone, did not pick up the phone, submitted a medical certificate by her brother-in-law, who's a doctor, so that's all very weird. And then obviously you figured out she was lying, she wasn't looking sick, talking to HR about the medical certificate. And if she goes on leave again, they were told, tell us when this happens, because her performance wasn't good, she wasn't much interested in the work, so obviously there was something going on behind the scenes. Now, again, you said here that after a month she disappeared and her mobile was switched off and everybody was worried what actually happened to her, probably whether she's sick, in a hospital, whatever. Nobody could reach her, and nobody knew anything about this. So HR were informed, and interestingly, you decided, this is a great example, right? That the parents should be informed. HR sent a letter to the father requesting to contact the office immediately, and she went back to the office the next day. She wanted to settle in her personal life, was on leave, wanted to resign with immediate effect, questioned why HR and you were actually in a position to send a letter to the parents who are old and cannot speak English. I mean, first of all, let's just finish this example here, and then I make another comment here. Since she wanted to quit with immediate effect, she would need to pay the bond amount that she had signed beforehand, and she didn't want to do that. She's from a very poor family background, and then there was a one-on-one discussion with the immediate manager, and then they would agree to waive the money. So you felt hurt as the manager didn't even bother to check what was going on when the girl was actually lying. You gave all the details including the net certificate by her brother-in-law, and then the case was put up again. It was decided that she will pay the amount as per the rule. Otherwise, she would not be giving a relieving letter, which obviously would be a problem for her. And she didn't want to work, she didn't want to pay. So it was really difficult to convince people here what was really going on. I think this is a great example because you cannot just obviously lie, you need to be truthful, but you always want to have the support of the managers as well, right? Because you would be seeing here people setting a wrong example to other newcomers here who would just follow the same path. And so in the end, this girl agreed to pay the bond amount within a fortnight. And the last sentence here, I think, is important. In this incident, I learned that you need to listen to yourself. So it's about intuition again, all right? Okay, so Mahima, you're also facing a similar issue. See, this is, and I think standing by this is really important. Now, this issue with sending this to the parents, and we have another story coming up where the parents were involved, works in an Indian context. It will not work in a Western context, for example. So if you want to do this in a, I don't know, in the UK, in a UK company, it won't work, and in a US company. So just to let you know, just as a side step here. But I think it was, exactly, these situations do differ from culture to culture, and you need to be aware of it. Again, it's awareness that's key, because, for example, if I tell, let's put it like this, I'm the academic director of an MBA program in Europe, in Austria, at the Management Center Innsbruck. When I have admission interviews, Indian students, Indian prospective students would show up by themselves. However, when I did admission interviews in Singapore, Indian students would often show up with their parents. And exactly, the parents are involved everywhere. And a family, again, we have the 44 people, 44,000 opinions, right? So it's just, yeah, overprotected, but it's just having an opinion about everything. So it is a cultural thing. So this actually works well in an Indian scenario, but it will not work in a US scenario. It will not work in a Japanese scenario, for example, either. It will not work in a European scenario. Anyway, so I wanted to share this with you. Then Reka, this is something, I cannot go through all of this here, but I found this table very interesting. How the challenge was met and the effect on employee behavior, because you tabled this very, very well. How people feel that they belong to a team with a personal touch, etc., etc. So I thought that really, really well tabled here. Then equal consideration for men and women, that during team discussions and meeting clear communication is encouraged, equal working hours for all, security for women, and specific family dependency work from home facilities checked, and all stuff like that. I think it was a really, really good table here. Pratana, you lost my voice. I hope you can hear me again. Can everybody hear me? Okay, now it's back again. All right. Apparently, maybe some people cannot. It's only some people cannot hear me. It might be maybe the internet connection at your end, because it shows for me 100%. I'm not quite sure. All right. Again, here the table here. Rika, I think really good table here. Then here, another example. And Namrata, you're not the only person apparently who has been facing this, because we had a number of contributions talking about performance appraisals in the bell curve. You said here you remember your case when your manager was asked by HR to downgrade your rating from 4 to 3 on the premise that you did not complete your mandatory trainings on time, which was not acceptable, and 3 were done well before time, 1 was completed well before the extended deadline, and which should be counted on time. You raised it to higher management and HR and voiced your opinion, but everywhere you were told that this is the verdict pushed down from higher ups and nothing can be done. Now, no one was aware of what's really going on, or no one is aware of what's really going on, and you got to know that it's just to fit the bell curve. Some decisions were made, and that's how things were different. And I posted as a reply here that this relying on a bell curve for a distribution for a performance appraisal is, in my humble opinion, absolutely and fundamentally wrong. You cannot push everyone into a mold, number one. Secondly, if you have a high-performing team, I mean, I've just seen this same thing yesterday only. You are a super high performer, and you're in a super high-performing team, but you have to be reported as in the lowest bracket of or in the worst-performing 10%. I've witnessed this yesterday. I've seen this, and you have a higher than 93% rating or whatever. This is just ridiculous. Amy, I hope you don't have to go through this for your really for long, because this is ridiculous, and this is fundamentally wrong. It's really fundamentally wrong. Exactly, both as a manager as well as an employee. And statistics are not worth the paper if you try to fit it in this manner. So you always have to explain why this is not making any sense here, you know? If we have adopted the mechanism, as managers, you need to comply with this approach. How about talking to HR and strategic management, because HR should be a part of strategy? But this makes no sense at all, because you will lose valuable resources and valuable core competencies from the company if you continue doing that, So big problem. So then, Bindu, you had this example that one of your employees was expecting a promotion and wasn't good at languages. You explained it to him, he understood. Again, we have the part of communication in here. Then Reshma mentioned that this was a person that I don't know. And I guess again, a number of you have experienced this. That you had a manager you had to work with who would pass on your work as his work. And after all the work done, he would never even thank you for this. When an escalation occurred, he told people that actually it's your fault. So this is really ridiculous. And as you say here, it was getting difficult to handle the situation. You had no one to complain to, as you feared nobody would believe it. You didn't want to talk about this and escalate it about the manager. But the project manager realized the issue and took this matter to the senior management, and then HR had to be approached on appropriate action, and then the manager finally resigned. So I think, Reshma, this was a very good story about this, because this is unethical behavior, obviously, and it did not pay off, okay? Then Shayla, this is an example that you brought in about somebody who would misbehave in the office premises, would bang the computer, drop the keyboard, utter bad words. Female colleagues were offended by his behavior, and he wouldn't complete his work on time. He would join customer conferences late, and he's undergoing personal turmoil was his personal excuse. So what to do, yeah, right? In the end, this person figured out when, I think, Shayla, if I'm not mistaken, he moved to a different company, right, in the end. And because there were so many stories, I hope I have the correct in mind. Okay, yes, that's great. So he moved to a different company, and you met him afterwards, as far as I remember, and then you realized how mature he had become. And it's not an easy task to do, to get these people then under control, because obviously you cannot have somebody affect the whole team like that. It is really impossible. Then Pratana shared a story. Yes, Kapila, it's about EQ. How you develop your own EQ and help the team develop a higher EQ. And that's, again, it's about awareness. Awareness is key again. If you figure it out, that there might be a problem, if you're tuned into these potential issues, you will see them more easily. And I'm 100% sure you will be able to see potential issues coming up much sooner now than you maybe were before, because just you're more tuned into this and maybe more alert. Now, Pratana mentioned this really interesting example here as well, that there was a requirement for a skilled professional offshore that company didn't have any to put offshore, so they agreed to put a fresher on the team. The reality was different. The fresher was not experienced, did not know how to answer the client's questions, so they pulled out another guy who's technically sound from another project, made him talk to the clients as the fresher. So this is getting really interesting. So the client was under the impression that they're talking to the newly added team member, but someone else was answering the questions on the phone. As leading the on-site team that time found this behavior highly unethical, as they could recognize the person's voice. This was a challenging situation, as I had to either report them to the ethics council of the company by losing the offshore team support, or I have to play along, which was unethical. So isn't this an impossible thing to do? I mean, how can you ever be put into such a situation? And it's really difficult. Pratana, are you here today? I'm just asking because, again, as I mentioned, okay, maybe you can just type into the chat box what happened afterwards, because this is a highly highly unethical thing. Okay, the video calls might be a solution, but you know, if you only see them on a video call and never in person, what do you know who this person is, right? Exactly. So reporting to the ethical council would have led to a lot of people losing their jobs. So this is awful to put you into this situation. It's just highly unfair. So you reported it to the customer relationship manager, and what happened? As a warning, yeah. And here's another answer for the telephonic interviews. That's clear, but this is a longer standing relationship here. So this was then taken up with the offshore manager. Let's just see. What happened afterwards, and they stopped the practice, yes. So this is, I mean, the customer must have been fuming mad when figuring this out, unless the customer did not figure it out, you know. How can anyone ever come up with the idea as passing somebody else, passing off as someone else? And okay, so then they introduce the other guy to the customer and saying he will help for some time. So that's a, you know, wiggly waggly thing to get this sort of sorted out, right? But I think the situation here is a great case study for what not to do and how you can be put into a really awkward situation and you don't really know what to do. It's a catch-22 position, really, because people might lose their jobs, etc., etc., etc. So not easy. Okay, let's go back to the role of communication. Whenever you mentioned the role of communication, how important this is, I absolutely agree. You cannot. Okay, let's go back to what Kirti says. Of Mr. X giving interview on behalf of Mr. Y. Yeah, of course, you will need to terminate this contract. This is ridiculous. This is absolutely ridiculous, Kirti. This what you just mentioned here. This situation impossible. Yeah. Anyway, let's go back to the role of communication. The importance of communication, that you cannot really over communicate. These things that you need to be clear and transparent. And Swapna, you mentioned short emails that you send every day, which I thought was very nice, this story. That you just thought, you know, you give them a short email every day with a little bit of information in there, just to, you know, feel more secure in the new project. And then you weren't really sure whether people are actually reading these emails until you figured out that they actually do read your messages, because when you stopped sending them, they asked, what happened to the messages? And I think this is so nice, because you see, even though sometimes people do not acknowledge it, it goes a long way, and it really, I don't know, it helps. And I thought it's a great gesture, and that boils back to the verbal and non-verbal communication part. Obviously, the short emails, it's verbal communication, but it is a sign as well that you care. So it is not only the content of the email, but it's the fact that you bother to send this email, just as a small token, really, not to you know, flood people with emails, but just as a small morning token that you chose to do. I thought that was very, very good. Okay, so let's go back here to what people were posting. For similar situation, Mohini, you said, we made a practice to shortlist over telephonic interview, face-to-face interview through video call. Yes, absolutely. How things worked out then? Okay. Yes. Yes, you definitely have to do this when you interview interview people, right? No way around this. So, and I would like to go back here on some of the posts. Sandover, decisions in life do not come easy, especially when you are a woman. Absolutely correct, because the roles that you play are multiple in this life. So there are so many roles we have to play, and this is an ongoing process that you talk about here, which is circular in nature without an end. And you then posted about a decision-making incident when you moved to a new role only a few months ago. You wanted to make every team member see the benefits of the change, and this is why I talked about the importance of communication earlier. That a new manager would be taking over from you as part of the team, which obviously, and I completely understand, wasn't easy to do, and it took you 3 months to actually brainstorm and collect the facts, get the approvals for the new managers, and you know, how does this all work? And then you said something so nice. They were like my children. I call them my girls. I wanted to communicate the change of manager personally to my team members, and you knew there was information floating around. You always have these, you know, rumors coming around, and the most important thing is to be clear and transparent in your communication, and really from the beginning to ensure that all these rumors, or at least most of them, can be avoided. You had to keep the information confidential until it was officially approved, and then a few things came to your mind when you wanted to overcome the challenge with the support of your decision. You know, ethically it's important to be honest, to be dependable, to be transparent, and perceive the change to be beneficial to all. Let them tell you what they want and be open. Because if you try to hide, they will lose their trust, and you would lose the support of the team that you had built over the last 4 years. And this is great, you know, because you communicate. You see here, without spending a moment's delay, you sent out a meeting invite to the team, all in the same location, were invited to one room. You announced the new manager's name, you flashed the organization chart. It was very clear with the roles and responsibilities, who has to do what within the group. You were transparent, you showed the benefits of the change, and how the team would gain importance, and how this would add value to the entire function, and how you would also get opportunities to learn and grow within the organization. So this is a great example, because as you said here, what helped you achieve this was your set of values, which you think are important, given whatever decision you make in any situation. Honesty, loyalty, concern for others, respect, commitment, and integrity will always enlighten the decision-making power in you. And I think this is a great, great statement. And since I was asked before how I handled these 30-plus year older males that all of a sudden had to report to me, I think it boils down to this, I must say. Honesty, loyalty, concern for others, respect, commitment, and integrity. And people will usually really appreciate this. However, I mean, you might always find, you know, the odd rotten apple in the box, if you know what I mean. But in general, I think this is a very, very, very important point here. Transparency does bring trust, yes. And so you have honesty here. You can maybe equal sorry, honesty and transparency, or put transparency in there separately. You then went on to say that every single member in the room and on call showed enthusiasm in the voice to be part of the change. Commitment to deliver was there, and benefit was seen. Team felt self-motivated to take on the change, and your assurance to stay connected with each of them has built a healthier relationship within the team, and this is really, really great. You will have your, I believe it's the next module that's on change management, or is it the fourth module on change management? You will be talking about this. You can talk about a lot of such examples there as well. Okay, so important, no member feels left out. The impact is not only on the team members, but also affected you as an individual. You grew in your role, you took on additional responsibilities in your stride, and you successfully transitioned the stage. And you see, your last sentence here, that is kudos to your team. So you're all part of the team, you're all in it, and I think it's really good. It really shows how this can be done well. Now, another example, and I believe this was also posted by you, Sanabah, was that your reference was given by someone to an organization that was hiring, and then you were asked to answer the questionnaire, but you realized that you really cannot answer all this because you didn't really know the person that well. And I think this is also an excellent example. What are you going to do? Now, you did it this way, that you wrote back honestly to the person saying, sorry, I will not be able to provide the details because just not possible. And you told the acquaintance that you will not go beyond your call of duty to answer those. The candidate was rejected. You do not regret your decision at all. I mean, after all, you don't know if he would have been rejected anyway as well. Maybe his CV was just not good enough. Maybe his skills were not good enough, you know. So I think this is another great example. We had so many great examples coming up here. And Radha, this was something that was just posted, I think, 2 days ago. When you joined a new department, you were greeted with, we offer you our condolences for joining this department. I mean, this is really tells you, this tells you everything about the culture there, right? And this boss, who was very strict and an angry person, used to scold everyone for silly issues, scold you so badly because of unclear photocopies, and you started to really think about leaving the company. But in the end, you know, he said that he just wanted to have good quality. My reply to this was that high quality, yes, I'm a perfectionist, you know, but keep the respect. What's the problem in not in showing respect? Why are people not showing respect? And scolding people because a photocopy is not clear and making people cry, there's something wrong in the picture, right? Namrata, okay, you log off for another meeting, no problem. So I don't get it why this needs to be done like this. And the manager behaved, yeah, he behaved like this. It's just impossible. It's just, I don't know. How can a team work like this when they tell you, we offer you our condolences for joining this department? It's very difficult to work with, I can imagine. And it is, this, you know, this is an example for, this is still legal, but it is unethical what he did, you know? This is a good example. If he would say, you know, well, the quality wasn't there, blah, blah, blah. And I think what you did was that you just tried to sort of exhale, be very calm, keep your keep yourself composed, and do the work properly. And then he realized you're doing good work, and that is the problem. You know, rather to change yourself, yes, in a way that you don't take it to your heart, probably, right? And okay, Kavita, no problem. And ignoring harsh words is easier said than done, because it's like with violence, you know. Violence does not need to be physical; it can be psychological as well, and that does harm your self-esteem. And especially if it's not the first time you've maybe heard this in your life, it makes it even worse. So what is Kalpala to say? We should not be the one feeling bad for somebody else behaving unethically. Yes, we should be learning from this, and we should know that we don't do it like that, and that if we ever come in such a situation of being responsible for X, Y, Z people, this is certainly what we don't want to do. And this is a trap we do not want to fall in, you know. So, yeah, Priti, no problem. You can log off. We'll be done soon here anyway. Shubhada, I wanted to just bring this up very quickly. Kalparata, one point here starts right from schooling. Yes, absolutely. And this is why we do not want to reproduce such things. Unethical behavior, we can stop it in our own ways. We don't have to, you know, keep the wheel going. We can Um, but going back here, this is a story which is impossible, really, absolutely impossible. There was a sales guy who sold the free distribution samples to the doctors. And you called it selling the medicine from free distribution sample to doctors a theft. And he said, no problem. No problem at all. You can sign off, no problem at all. All right. And this was a shocking story, really, because these free samples should have been distributed to doctors so that they obviously will prescribe them in the future. But what the sales guy did was he sold them at half price to the doctor, and the doctor sold it on at the full price to the patients until this came up and this was escalated and, you know, big drama ensued. But this is just completely ridiculous. And yeah, a great story that you shared here, I must say, really, really shocking. Anyway, so that was it for the examples. For the IKEA discussion board, I'm not going to go through this now because we have had only a few posts on this. I do not want to interfere with the content that others are hopefully posting very soon. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to post on Sunday, so towards the end of the discussion board, I'm going to post something on IKEA to let you have maybe more ideas as well about this, okay? So I do not want to cloud your, I don't know, views on this now, because we just had to, I just want to see your original views, that's it. And yes, Calculator, I know you need a little more time for posting on IKEA. Exactly, that's why, and I don't want to talk about it in this setting here because I just feel it's not doing you a favor like this. Okay, I don't know, it's all hectic in project. If you need an extension, let me know, because I'm not sure how the extensions can be done. But if you need extensions, do please send me an email, all right? So that we can see if we can keep this discussion board open maybe a couple of days longer, all right? Okay, so if anyone has a problem here, let me know. Anyway, we have one post that I also want to bring up here, that is Sukirti, who says, for IKEA, making profits is not a sin, but the ways to increase the profits should be ethical. And then we also have here a link. In one of the sections, it was mentioned that there was something on child labor in the newspapers. I looked it up, so it must have been this link. In fact, it was a similar link. It wasn't exactly this link. Nikita, yeah, no problem. You can do that. After the post is closed down. Yeah, okay, no problem. Try and post it to the discussion board. As I said, if you have any issue with this, try to just send me an email. All right? So we'll see. But you might want to check the newspaper of last week, where it's all about child labor in India. Just to round up the thing here, we had a link posted by Minnie about a story about Tata doing a 300 women leader program for the first time ever. Then Gladys, you posted how great leaders inspire action, a video, and Shayla, you also posted a TED talk about choosing what to choose. All right. Okay. See that this case study of this calculator was not evaluated. Okay. You please send this to student care if this was not evaluated. Okay. And if you have any issues with keeping within the time frame, within the deadlines, please do let me know right away for this module. Okay? So I just would like to close this session by just reminding you, be there, be present, and make yourself seen. Try to be on the discussion boards and talk to each other on the discussion boards, because as a lot of you have seen already, you learn a lot when you interact with the others. You get to see so many more perspectives. And as always, if you have any questions, do not hesitate to contact me, all right? Okay, I'm looking forward to reading your contributions on the discussion boards. Have a great day. And as I said before, any questions, you just let me know, all right? Have a great day. Bye.